Hello and welcome to Two Crazy Media. We talk about the craziest news in games, movies, and TV. Happy 2024, Happy New Year, everyone. It is officially the new year. We are filming this on Monday, New Year's Day, and we are so excited. This is our first ever New Year's filming on the channel. We started the channel back in, I believe, April of last year, and we are so glad to still be continuing doing it. I can't believe it. We're here. It's January now, into the new year, and for the first couple of videos of this year, we want to do something a little different. We will probably not have a normal news video, a weekly news video that we usually do for a week or two. We do want to focus the next couple of videos, so they might come out in a quicker amount of time. You might not have to wait a full week for each video. A couple of these videos we want to kind of pump out. So we are going to be doing, for the first couple of videos of the year, we will be doing a couple videos on recapping some events of last year, but then also going into the future of 2024 and all aspects of movies, TV, video games, and more. A whole plethora of things. We want to kind of expand what we talk about this year, not just movies, games, and TVs. Obviously, that is what we are going to focus on, especially with the news videos. But when it comes to just videos like this, today's special video, we do want to focus on other topics. Like, for example, today, we are going to be talking about Halloween Horror Nights. This is, if you don't know, I'm sure most people know what it is, but it is a big yearly event that happens every year, September and October, that Universal Studios puts on in all their theme parks across the world. It is a horror event. It is awesome. It is probably the biggest horror haunt event out there in terms of theme parks. They have tons of IPs, tons of original houses that you can walk through, scare zones, all the mix. And I love it. We both love it. We've both been going to it for the past 2 years now. Huge fans of it. So for this video, we want to do a little recap of 2023 Horror Nights, and then also maybe go into some predictions for 2024. Whether that's talking about possible houses and also other improvements. We want to do a lot of predictions videos for our next couple of videos. So this video is going to be on Horror Nights. We also want to do a video on the upcoming movies of 2024. We'll also talking about our favorite films of 2023, and also do a video on video games, talking about what video games are coming this year and beyond as well. Because to be honest, we don't know too much video games coming out this year past the first 3 months. So we do want to kind of go maybe more beyond some games that haven't got release dates, some games where we don't even know what year they're coming out, some games that have not even been revealed but are kind of rumored to be shown off this year. And we also maybe want to talk about our game of the year for last year, what our top 5, top 10 of the year was. But for our first video, we do want to talk about Horror Nights. So we are first going to start with the Horror Nights 2023 recap. We went this year. This was our second year going, and we both loved it. The first year going in 2022, it was a fun year, but we were pretty new to it. We didn't really understand a lot of it. It was a pretty new thing. Then 2023 came around. We went like 3 times, both of us. We go to the one in Hollywood. That's the only one we've been to, and so we don't really know we know what's happening at the Orlando one, but we've never experienced it for ourselves. But we are still going to talk about, when it comes to predictions, we are going to talk about Orlando and Hollywood together. But when it comes to our recap right now, we are going to focus on Hollywood because that is the one we went to. So Hollywood. First, we just want to start with what were our favorite houses.
Do you want to go first on this one? Because I need to think about it.
All right. I will start first with my favorite houses. I have a couple. I think there's 2 houses that come to my mind first with what were probably my favorites. Definitely put down below in the comments what you thought your favorites were. But for me personally, in terms of just a house that just absolutely, I was so just amazed by walking through it, so just immersed into the world that it was based off of, and so blown away by everything they did, it would had to be The Last of Us. This is a house that I was probably most excited for. We are a channel that talks a lot about video games, and we've said multiple times on the channel how much we love The Last of Us, how much we love the TV show and the games as well. And so this house was just an absolute treat. It was so amazing. I love how they are finally incorporating more video games into the event. We never really got that much video games ever, so to finally get some more video game representation and the popularity of Last of Us, the lines were always so long for that house each night. So that really does make me hope and believe that from the Universal, they're really gonna at least one video game related house each year, because that is definitely a growing fan base. It's something pretty big, and video games are growing in popularity as the years go by, and they are reaching more of the mainstream. But no, let's talk about the house in general for Last of Us. It was an amazing house. It was scary, but not like totally like freak out scary. Like, I felt like this year I wasn't too freaked out about the houses compared to last year. I feel like last year in 2022, the first year, definitely kind of, I didn't really get the full effect of the houses because I was just kind of freaked out the whole time. This year I was kind of more laid back. I was more just taking like the scenery, just enjoying it, while also just enjoying the scares in general, not freaking out about all of them. But the scares were great. The actors were great in that house. I love the sets and how they took scenes from the video game and put it in. There were some great Easter eggs from the games as well if you really looked closely, and it was awesome. I loved how they kind of incorporated a lot of Ellie and Joel in the house, a lot of where they were just acting with no scares in a room, and I really like that, kind of making it more immersive, more cinematic, and that's something I really enjoyed. When it comes to my other favorite house, when I think of, it probably had to be Exorcist Believer. While it wasn't the most crazy house in terms of beautiful sets or anything like that, it was a house that just got me in terms of just how scary it was. This is probably the scariest house, and a lot of people will agree with me on that one. It was the most intense house of the year. It was just scares left and right, and they were really good scares. The actors were great at what they were doing. They really set them up well, but just from the scares to just the smells as well, it didn't smell great in that house, especially in a couple of rooms. It was not very pleasant, which kind of helps with the immersion. But no, it was just a really intense house, and I came out of it just absolutely just like, wow, I need to do that again. That was amazing. What about you?
So I would agree with you on Last of Us, but I'm going to give two different ones to be different from you. So my first favorite house would probably be Monstros.
Yes.
I think a lot of people also agree with that.
Yeah, that's a runner-up for me.
Mm-hmm. I think that house, it's super creative what they did with it. I think the theming of it is great. I think there's so much detail. It's so much fun to walk through. It's a very scary house, but it's not like house. It's not too scary. It's not the scariest one, but it's very scary. It's very immersive.
Yes.
Like the design of it is great. It's a beautiful house. Like, I couldn't praise it enough. And I would say my second favorite house would be, honestly, I would say I really like Holidays in Hell.
Yes.
We did this house a lot.
This is probably the house we did the most.
But
not only because the wait times were pretty short compared to most other houses.
I really love how this house has all those different holidays and how each room feels very different. Yeah. The smells elevate this house. Everything of the theming, because it's all over the place, it's great. Mm-hmm. The costumes, the designs, everything about this house is just so good. It's great.
Yeah, no, I also love Holidays in Hell. This was a house we probably did the most. It was a lot of fun. It's a pretty freaky house. There were a lot of scares that got me. I love especially the turkey scare. That room was horrible as well. Mm-hmm. The smell in that room was terrible. I love the Halloween room with the people dressed and you don't know who's real and who's fake. I love when they do that gimmick. Also, I think that's really good, and the scares do really work. That gimmick. But those are our favorite houses. I think another house I just want to mention as being a great house that was Monsters Unmasked. I was a huge fan of that house. I know a lot of people who that was their favorite house. A lot of people that we went with, when I talked to them recently, they did say this was their favorite. It was a very well-liked house. I really enjoyed it. I love the theming. I thought it was one of the most beautiful houses of the year as well. It was gorgeous. The scares were great. It was just a really immersive house, and I loved the costuming. I loved just going through the abandoned movie theater and stuff. I thought that was really cool. And the Invisible Man scenes were great. But no, now when we get into our least favorite houses, I think the one that comes to mind, and I think for you as well, is Chucky. Chucky was not a great house. I think it was the first house we did. No, it was the second house we did. And we weren't expecting too big. We're not fans of Chucky. We've never seen the Child's Play or Chucky movies, so we don't really know too much about Chucky. But going through the house, it just wasn't that great. I thought some of the sets were cool and creative, and but there were no scares. There were there was like one scare, but most of the time it didn't really get me. So I just feel like it wasn't the greatest. I thought the giant Chucky at the end was pretty cool. I will admit that was a cool moment, and that was probably my favorite part of the house. But other than that, it wasn't a house that got me too much. It didn't really like leave me like, oh, I want to do this again. Even though we did the house a couple times, trying to be like, oh, maybe the next time we do it, it'll be better. It just didn't really get better, to be honest. It wasn't a terrible house. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't bad in any thing. I just don't think the puppets coming at you, while it is cool and I love that, I just think they weren't too scary, to be honest with you. I think it was just it was a comedy house, to be honest. It was one of the comedy houses of the year, and while I like that, and while I did think it was kind of funny, you know, there were a couple funny scenes in it, it just wasn't the freakiest house, and I ended up having a little more fun than I would have almost like, it was more of a house where I could just kind of like laugh at things, then more like be like laugh at funny sets, then be like, oh wow, that's like a really like cool creative house, like good scares. I think you'd agree.
Yeah.
As well. We weren't the biggest fans of Chucky. It definitely was the least scariest house there. I think another house that not really like it didn't really disappoint me. I just wished it was better was Stranger Things. This was a house that I did not find scary either. There was like maybe one scare that got me, and that was just because it was kind of double scary. I got scared by one person, then another person came out from a door next to it, and I was like, oh my god, I didn't expect that. But other than that, it was more, but I wasn't like too disappointed. I didn't hate it. I actually kind of liked it. It wasn't scary, but the sets were great.
Yes.
Sets were really beautiful. I thought it was a really short house though. I definitely felt like going through it. It was definitely like a house that felt like you're in it and you're out of it. And I can remember the whole thing just going through it. And I feel like it's almost shorter than a lot of other houses.
Yeah.
I kind of like when a house does feel like it's going on forever, because it really does give you that feel of you really are trapped in a haunted house. And I feel like with that house is just kind of like you're in and you're out. It gives that feeling.
Although the one thing I do like about the show is that it goes in order of the events of the season, which I really appreciate.
Yeah.
And it does it very well. But
no, I do like that. I think the final thing that did kind of disappoint us was the Terror Tram. The Terror Tram is not, it's not the best. I feel like even last year, the 2022's Terror Tram was not the greatest either. I think it is really cool walking through especially for me, someone who absolutely loves the Universal backlot and is a dream to like kind of work on it one day in the future when I'm older, to kind of just walk around and work on it and make a movie on that backlot. It is really cool to walk around Bates Motel and the scene from War of the Worlds and all that. It is really cool, but at the same time, I just feel like the Terror Tram is not pretty scary. It feels like just a longer scare zone, but like with like tighter, less scare actors.
It's a little outdated.
They
did take steps this year to make it more unique.
Yeah, they had a little house area, but even then it was kind of meh because it was so crowded in there at all times. Like it was so crowded where you didn't get that many scares because there were so many people around. I think there's a lot of chainsaws. I think that's cool, and I really do like the part where you go through Jupiter's Claim at the end, and you've got all the Jordan Peele, the characters from Us. I think that is definitely my favorite part. That's the reason why I do it. I would do it just for that if they kept it. So definitely Universal, do keep that, because even if the Terror Tram was a little disappointing, I would definitely go just to walk through Jupiter's Claim. But yeah, I thought the theme was cool. It was an interesting theme. The exterminators, bugs, I think that's pretty creepy. And like the costumes were definitely freaky. The scare actors were great though. Don't get me wrong, there was one scare actor that kind of stopped in front of us and kind of like started to like shake and like do something. It was really gross, but it was really cool to watch. But it was definitely freaky, and it was like something like, wow, that's like impressive, like great acting. But other than that, like they're not just scaring, they're like really like disturbing you, and I think that was really cool. But on to other things. Everything else was great. From the food, we tried a couple different food items, like special food items. Those were all great. We tried some cool Cordyceps corn dog.
Great.
That was really good. That was definitely our favorite. Other things we really liked were the shows. We were able to see both shows. We went to the Blumhouse show, was pretty cool. Getting to see all the Five Nights at Freddy's costumes that they made was awesome in person. And then the show was great with Megan and all that. It was really cool. Other than that, the other show was awesome. I really loved it. It was my favorite show. It was what was it called again?
The Purge show.
It was the Purge Dark Waters. The
Yeah.
Purge Dark Waters. It was where Waterworld is, and it was awesome. I loved it. It was super fun. Getting to watch it, how they had the fake blood fly everywhere when like a guy got his head smashed. It was awesome. I love the water stunts, all the lights, just like the EDM lights were absolutely blinding, but so cool to watch. It was really great. So I love that the jet skis. It was a really cool show, and I really liked it, and I hope it returns next year because this is a new show, and I think both shows were new, and I think both shows knocked it out of the park. When it comes to dislikes, I think the one issue that everyone had with Horror Nights was just the wait times and the crowd levels this year. They were definitely worse than other years from what people have said. They were pretty bad. The wait times were so long. Constantly Stranger Things was always at a 180 wait time, and they would say,
I never saw it
you can't
under.
come in. It was never under, and they were always like, no, you can't come in, you have to wait. This was with Last of Us as well. It was at the line was at full capacity a lot of times, and they just wouldn't let you in, and so that was a little wild. I think when we go into 2024, when we do our predictions, we are going to kind of go into maybe ways to fix it, to kind of mitigate the crowds, but I think they did oversell tickets this year, and it was just a little too crowded, and just, you had to go more than once to do all the houses, which kind of sucks unless you have the RIP tour, or you've got Lightning Lane, or the Fast Pass.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you don't, you're gonna be waiting and you're not gonna do it. Like, we first 2 times we went, we weren't able to do everything in one night. We sadly just didn't have the time to do everything and we stayed for, especially the second night, we stayed for the whole time and just didn't have the time left to do the rest. And then that also the last night we were there, the third night we were actually able to do everything. That's because we did early access and we got there early and we were able to do everything early. We got there really early. We just got everything done. So we were able to do a lot of houses 2 times that night. Even some houses 3 times that night. Which was good, but it just did it was disappointing where like the other nights you really have to go twice in order to do everything, which kind of sucks. Now let's get into our 2024 predictions. We are going to be talking about the house predictions, whether that's originals and IPs, and then also we're going to get into some when could we start seeing announcements for houses, and then also other improvements that we're going to talk about to maybe mitigate the crowds. So for our predictions, let's first talk about house predictions. This is the thing that most people are talking about. It is 2024, which really starts the HHN prediction season. A lot of people do start speculating in 2023, especially when Horror Nights ends. When that year's Horror Nights ends, I know I've seen a lot of speculation coming from people, but not really serious. Now is when it's going to start getting really serious with speculations and rumors, and soon we'll start getting speculation maps from all the really cool accounts on Twitter. I definitely recommend. If you like to see those speculation maps, definitely follow. I know HHN365 is a really cool account. They're the ones who release all the speculation maps and a lot of other ones. HHN Nightmares is another one that releases a lot of speculation maps. So definitely check out those accounts and more on Twitter. But first, let's start with originals. We don't have too much for what we think originals. It's always kind of a toss-up for what originals could be coming, like what are the returning originals. I know for 2023, we got the return of Holidays in Hell, which was a fan favorite original that did return. But there's also a lot of originals that are new, like Monstros and Monsters Unmasked. And so, speaking of Monsters Unmasked, obviously every single year they do this now. We're probably going to get another Universal Monsters house. We don't know what this could be based off. Last year's was more the Paris-themed monsters, like Hunchback of Notre Dame, Phantom the Opera. You had Invisible Man.
Yeah.
And Dr. Jekyll and Hyde. Very, very cool. But I think this year we're going to get something different. The year before we got the Wolfman, Mummy, and Dracula. So I think this year we might do something new. We've gotten every single I think the one monster that we haven't gotten this big is Creature of the Black Lagoon.
Which we could get.
I think that's gonna be my guess for what we could get this year. That is a highly requested monster to return to Horror Nights. We have not got that in a while. I think that'd be super cool to see. I love the Creature of the Black Lagoon. I think that could be an absolutely terrifying house if that is there. So that's my guess. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think either that or possibly Frankenstein's Bride will return.
Yeah,
Maybe
return
or a completely new house for her.
because we did get a house. Frankenstein's Bride was a house a couple of years ago at Horror Nights. I'd love to see that there as well. I've heard that's a great house, so I'd love to experience it myself. But no, I hope it's Creature of the Black Lagoon. Maybe even I'd love to see Frankenstein back. We haven't seen Frankenstein in a couple of years, and I think Frankenstein's a pretty creepy character, especially at Horror Nights, so love to see that back. Other originals we could see back, when you're thinking of originals from past years, a lot of times houses like Curse of Pandora's Box, Scarecrow the Reaping, and a lot of other houses do come to mind. We could get maybe some houses. A lot of times I like to maybe original house from Orlando comes to Hollywood. Like I'd love to see some Orlando houses appearing. Obviously not the houses based on the icons in Orlando because we don't have that here in Hollywood. But we could be getting a house based off, say, like they had Blood Moon, Dark Offering, or I'd love to see their house, Darkest Deal.
Mm-hmm.
That was a really cool house that I wish was here, so I'd love to see that. Another original house that'd be kind of like a new theme this year would be Lovecraft. I know in Orlando, they had the tribute store there, and they did go a little bit into Lovecraftian horror. I would love to see some Lovecraftian horror come to Hollywood in its own house. I think all the Cthulhu and stuff like that stuff is really interesting, and we don't get enough stuff like that at Horror Nights. We don't really get any of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like some of that stuff would be really cool to see. But that's really all we have for originals. Originals are more just a toss-up of we really start to know more about the original houses when we get closer to, when we get the spec maps, when we get the speculation maps and more like that. Now let's get into probably the thing that's more easier to guess on, and that is IPs. So we are going to cover movies, TVs, also video games as well, because that is something that I feel like Horror Nights, they are going to want to expand on in the future. We do kind of have a list of things we want to see. I think a big thing to look at is also the horror movies releasing this upcoming year in 2024, and also some that released in 2023 but were too late for Horror Nights. I think the big one that everyone wants to see is Five Nights at Freddy's. Most likely based off the movie that came out this year to huge popularity, but it also could be based off the video games, like we have The Last of Us house. I'd love to see this.
I think that because the movie came out in October of last year, I think that it would be based off the first game.
Yeah, I think it would be based off the video games instead of the movies.
Mm-hmm.
And the movie itself was so popular, it is one of the most highest grossing movies of the year. It is Blumhouse's highest grossing film as well, so I think that's really cool. It is one of Universal's highest grossing horror movies. And honestly, people loved it. We liked the movie.
Wasn't the greatest, but it's of
I
course
definitely enjoyed
not
it.
a surprise. It's Five Nights at Freddy's, one of the biggest games ever.
It was an enjoyable film, and I'd love to see it at Horror Nights. I don't know how they could do this though, pull it off, especially with it'd be a lot of animatronics, it'd be a lot of puppets.
But I think they can make it work.
And it'd be a lot of people in costumes, but I think they could definitely make it work. I think it'd be absolutely terrifying. They are huge, and I think it's really scary. I think the actors on stilts are always scarier whenever they're tall. Whenever they're extremely tall, that could definitely that invokes more fear, I feel like. And so I feel like with I know the animatronics in the movie are definitely taller, way taller than a normal person is, so that could invoke more fear. I think that'd be a really popular house. That'd definitely boast the longest wait times.
Mm-hmm.
That'd definitely be the house that you got to go to immediately, because that will be a long wait. Do I think that'll happen? Maybe. I think it's got a pretty high chance. Another house that I think has a pretty high chance is Last of Us Part 2. Most likely they will follow, and why I think this will happen is pretty likely this year, not next year, is that even though we are getting The Last of Us Season 2 on 2025, I do think it's more likely that we get The Last of Us Part 2 this year, because
the
the house
last
we
year.
got last year
Mm-hmm.
was based off the video games and not the show. That was a big thing, is that Last of Us Part 1, the house that we got, our favorite house, was based off the video games and not the show. So I think that if they want to continue that and have Last of Us 2 based off the video games, then they could just release it next year. I think there was a sign in Horror Nights Orlando
Last of Us Part
last year
2.
that said Last of Us Part 1 with a sign to it. And that's not what it was called, but there it was called that on a sign, so maybe that is setting up for a part 2 coming this year. Obviously, Last of Us was an extremely popular house. Everyone loved it. And so I'd love to see a Last of Us 2 house, especially next year. Follow whether they follow more events of the first game or they go into the second game.
Yeah.
Which is what I think is more likely. But then the house, Last of Us Part 1, last year was only based off one section of the game. But I think it's more likely that we get Last of Us Part 2 house based off actually Last of Us Part 2. That'd be really cool. I think it'd go well. Walking through like Seattle in a house would be awesome. Maybe we can see the Rat King. That'd be a pretty freaky scene. Other than that, another house that is heavily rumored is the Fall of the House of Usher. This was a pretty newer show that came out on Netflix this past year. It is by Mike Flanagan, who, as you know, has already had a house at Horror Nights based off his past show, Haunting of Hill House, also another Netflix show. And so it is a big rumor is that we could get his latest show, The Fall of the House of Usher, appearing at Horror Nights. While I don't really think this is pretty likely, just because this came out sometime in the middle of last year of 2023, and I feel like it would have been at Horror Nights last year instead, so it is kind of late to be at Horror Nights 2024, but who knows. They've got a pretty good relationship with Mike Flanagan and Netflix when it comes to houses like that, even though they just had a Stranger Things house last year with Netflix, so they could want to do maybe a House of Usher house this year, and then 2025 do Stranger Things Season 5, just keep up every single year we get a Netflix house. That could be a thing Netflix really wants to do, and same with Universal, because it would be a popular house. Do you think we could get Fall House of Usher?
I don't, only because it came out kind of a while ago. I feel like it's not really timely anymore.
Though it was a pretty freaky show, and I heard it was pretty good, so I think it could go well with a house. Other than that, I think another house that could appear is an upcoming Blumhouse film titled Imaginary. The trailer is out. I'm sure if you've seen it, it is a pretty freaky film about imaginary animals and stuffed animals, kind of
evil.
Looks like a pretty freaky movie. Definitely something that I probably won't be seeing in theaters, but hey. Though I think this could be pretty likely. They obviously, Blumhouse is Universal. They have a great relationship with Blumhouse. There are usually Blumhouse houses at Universal, at Horror Nights every single year. For the past couple of years, we have gotten a Blumhouse house, whether that is like a house that's called Horrors of Blumhouse, and then just like a compilation of 2 movies like Black Phone and Freaky, or like last year where we just got Exorcist Believer. But no, I think Imaginary could be a pretty likely house, considering it's coming out this year. Another movie that is coming out this year that is pretty likely for a house is The Strangers Chapter 1. This seems like a pretty terrifying film that we have not got a trailer for yet, about like a creepy home invasion. Looks absolutely terrifying, definitely a movie I will not be seeing in theaters, and it could be a pretty freaky film. I think this would go really well in the soundstage for where
Exorcist was.
No, where
How Stranger Things?
No, Evil Dead was.
Yeah.
Considering Evil Dead, Evil Dead Rise last year, another actually house we both really liked. It's a pretty good layout for a house. So I think it'd go well for Strangers Chapter 1, which takes place mainly in a house, I think. That'd be a pretty freaky house, and I feel like I'd be absolutely terrified to do that, but still do it nonetheless. Now let's get into a couple of video games I'd love to see. Probably the most talked about video game, other than FNAF and Last of Us, that people will like to see at the event is a video game that came out in 2023 and was both of our Game of the Year, and that is Alan Wake 2. It's both of our Game of the Years, like we've said multiple times on this channel, and I think it'd go so well as a Horror Nights house. It has been pretty heavily wanted house. For 2024, I know a lot of people, even people that have never played Alan Wake 2, that are fans of Horror Nights, have said that they love to see an Alan Wake 2 house. From the popularity that it had at the Game Awards and the performance to the amount of awards it won, I feel like a lot of talk is on Alan Wake 2 and just how good it is. And also, it's a pretty freaky game. I know it's definitely the scariest game I played this year. It totally freaked me out. That I had multiple out loud jump scares, and I feel like it'd go really well with a house. I'd love to see them also incorporate them do a performance of Herald of Darkness in the house, maybe in a room or two. I think that'd be really cool, kind of like how they did it in a room in Orlando in the Stranger Things house, where they had them do the
Master of Puppets
performance on like a bus, kind of like from the show from Stranger Things. I think they did that, I know, for one of the rooms in the Stranger Things house there, so I'd love to maybe see something like that, similar to that, but for Alan Wake 2. I think this is a pretty likely house. I think the popularity of Alan Wake 2 is huge, and we are getting, it is not ending this year. We are getting 2 DLCs for Alan Wake 2 this year. We are getting Night Springs, and also, I forgot what the other one was called, the Lake House. Can't wait for both of those, but that is going to keep the talk of Alan Wake 2 alive for this year, and possibly into 2025, considering how long it takes for the Lake House to come out, which is going to be the second one. So I'd love to see, maybe, because people will still be talking about Alan Wake 2 with the DLCs during Horror Nights season, so I really do hope we get an Alan Wake. I think if we got an Alan Wake 2 house next year, I think that'd be my most anticipated house, and the house I'm most excited for, and probably the one I will go through about 10 times, maybe. Would you agree? Do you think Alan Wake house is likely?
I think it's gonna happen. I'm holding out hope that it'll happen.
Yeah. I think they want to expand into more video games, and I think that's a pretty good one to do. I think another house for a video game that is pretty likely is Silent Hill 2. This is going to be a pretty big year for Silent Hill 2. We are getting, obviously, Silent Hill 2 Remake, which is heavily rumored for sometime this year. I can't wait for that. So that is going to be a pretty big thing. We are also getting a movie this year, Return to Silent Hill, which not enough people are talking about. And then also we're getting, possibly at the end of this year or maybe next year, we could get Silent Hill F, which is a new mainline Silent Hill game. So a big year for Silent Hill, and I feel like a great thing, we have had Silent Hill in the past at Horror Nights, and I feel like if they do a return to Silent Hill 2 this year for a house, that'd be awesome. Getting chased by a Pyramid Head. Absolutely terrifying. I can't think of any other like video game characters from horror games that are as scary as Pyramid Head, in my opinion, so that'd be freaky. That would be a great scare in a house, and I feel like they can really use that to the highest potential at Horror Nights. So do you think Silent Hill 2 is likely?
I do. I think Alan Wake has a higher chance, I think Silent Hill 2.
And with the year it's about to have Silent Hill, I feel like it's pretty likely.
Yeah.
Another video game house that I'd love to see, but I think this is not really likely, is BioShock. This has been a house that a lot of people have wanted for years now, actually. Before even rumors for Last of Us started, people were wanting a BioShock house. I feel like BioShock would go really well with Horror Nights, especially in a soundstage. Just the beauty of the BioShock games. You could have it underwater and it'd be just a beautiful house. I would totally love a BioShock house. I think it'd be freaky having Big Daddies coming out too. That'd be pretty funny. But I think that's pretty unlikely. There is a BioShock, and there is a brand new BioShock game in the works, but it is probably not coming until 2025. We may get a reveal this year, but I probably won't see the game itself until next year, the earliest. So I don't think BioShock is pretty likely, but I'd love to see it if so. Now, I think the final video game we have on this list, but I think is pretty likely as well, is Fallout. And this is less based on the video game and more based on the TV show coming to Amazon Prime this year. As you all know, the Fallout TV show is happening. Can't wait for it. We haven't talked about it that much on the channel other than just it being at the Game Awards. But the trailer looks awesome. Absolutely can't wait. I'm a pretty big fan of Fallout. I love Fallout New Vegas. And I'd love to see maybe even the TV show, or maybe that just bakes it off the video games. I think Fallout could go really well. While it may not be categorized as a horror game, there are some pretty freaky parts of it. I've had some pretty freaky moments, especially in Fallout 4, going through the wasteland and kind of seeing like these creepy creatures and how like and getting chased by some. I think that'd be pretty freaky, and I think it'd go really well. And they'd have some ghouls. I know the ghouls could like they can get some ghouls with cool makeup to scare you. That'd be pretty awesome. But no, I think it's more likely the BioShock, but it's not too likely. Do you think Fallout House is likely?
I think both BioShock and Fallout are kind of stretches, but I think it'd be cool if it would happen.
No, yeah, I'd love to see that. Then I think this is a pretty likely house, but now we're getting back into movies coming out this year. This is Alien Romulus. We are getting a new Alien movie this year. We haven't got one in a while, and I feel like with the return of Predator, with Prey, I think that last year or 2 years ago, and the popularity of that, I feel like this is gonna be a pretty big film. One to definitely keep your eye out for. I know it's gonna be absolutely terrifying. Alien is such a freaky film, and the xenomorphs are absolutely terrifying. I feel like they have had alien houses before at Horror Nights, so I'd love to see a house based on the new Alien movie coming out this year. I think it is pretty likely. This is a pretty highly requested house.
It's also a huge IP, so
huge IP as well. Oh yeah, I think the one issue to get it is obviously Disney. They own the rights to Alien, so it could be a little difficult, but they've worked together before, so who knows. Another house that I think is pretty less likely, because we've gotten movies in this horror series before, but never a house based on it, is A Quiet Place. We're getting A Quiet Place Day 1 this year. I'm not too excited for it. I've never seen the other Quiet Place films, but I think it could go well as a Hornet's house. I know they are pretty freaky films. But the issue is they've never had a Quiet Place. We've had 2 Quiet Place films so far, and we've never had a house based on either. So I think this is pretty unlikely, but it is another pretty big high-profile horror movie coming out this year, so you kind of just have to think about all the high-profile movies coming out, especially horror films, and think, oh, we may have never gotten it, but we could get it. I think a pretty likely house, and this is one that a lot of people do want, is Terrifier 3. We are getting a new Terrifier movie this year with Art the Clown.
Well, the thing about this one is that we don't have a release date for it.
Yeah.
But it's rumored it's going to be around Christmas time because the trailer is very Christmas kind of themed. So if it does come out November, December, which I think is going to be the release date, then it won't be there. Maybe next year, though.
Maybe 2025. Yeah, then thank you for that. I think Terrifier then may be 2025. I think that is a really highly requested house, so I think that'd be awesome. I feel like when you're talking about new faces in horror and kind of new popular growing IPs and horror characters, Art the Clown is definitely the one that comes to mind. It just absolutely grew in popularity, and I feel like it'd be a great Horror Nights house. Just the popularity it has, and just how fun and not so freaky those movies are. I think it would be great, and I think it'd lend itself really well to a Horror Nights house. Another one that could be pretty likely is Beetlejuice 2. This is one of the bigger films coming out this year, and I absolutely can't wait for Beetlejuice 2. There was a Beetlejuice 1 house in 2021 that was pretty popular, and I feel like so they've done a Beetlejuice house before, so maybe we could get a Beetlejuice house movie. This Beetlejuice 2 house this year is pretty likely, considering they did Beetlejuice 1 already. I believe if it doesn't get delayed, Beetlejuice 2 is slated to come out September of this year. So, and early September 6th.
Which is I think the same week Horror Nights starts.
That is
might be the day.
That's the first or second week Horror Nights begins. If a Horror Nights does begin August 30th or September 1st, like it usually does. I think it'd be a pretty popular house. I'd love to see Beetlejuice 2 be here. I think it'd be definitely the comedy house of the year. And I always love some comedy houses, especially if they do have some good scares in it, but also great sets. Then a house that I think is pretty unlikely, but is Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. Well, that is another movie coming out this year. While it is not categorized as a horror film, so to say, there are probably going to be a couple of little jump scares in the movie, just like we got with Ghostbusters Afterlife. Each Ghostbusters film, while they may not be horror films, we do get a couple of jump scares in it. So it does lend itself to a little bit of the horror genre. I feel like with the new one coming out this year, we did get the Ghostbusters house a couple years ago, which I wish we really experienced it, because it seems like just such a cool house. and a unique house, and I feel like they could return with Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. Obviously, they didn't do one with Ghostbusters Afterlife.
There's a possibility they can combine both the movies
But
into
they
one.
could combine. Also, talk about combining. I think another one they could combine is Alan Wake 2. Going back to Alan Wake 2, I think it'd be a little weird to just do an Alan Wake 2 house if you don't really know this, if you haven't done Alan Wake 1. I feel like we don't do that too much. It's a little strange. Obviously, they've done that with the Halloween houses there, where they kind of do it out of order. But I think it'd be really cool. I think it'd be really cool if they do a mashup of Alan Wake 1 and 2 in a house. Maybe do just the first couple rooms based off Alan Wake 1, and then do a majority of the house based off the events of Alan Wake 2. Just maybe do like 1 or 2 rooms, just kind of explaining really quickly the story of Alan Wake 1. I think that'd be pretty cool. Speaking of, mashups. Then another house that could happen is The Weeknd. Obviously, he didn't really release any new like big songs, or he didn't have an album this year that was big, other than really The Idol, but it was kind of
Just singles.
yeah, just a couple singles this year. I think a big reason, but I'd love to see. We know he is releasing a new album. It is rumored this year. We could be getting the final. Like he said, he's doing one last album as The Weeknd, and it could be very likely this year. We did get The Weeknd house in 2022, which I was able to experience, and I think still might be my favorite house of all time. I loved it, so that's why I really hope to see a new Weeknd house this year. Maybe I know out in Universal, a couple of Universals across the sea, they got a Weeknd house this year, and they got both After Hours and also combined with some new scenes for Dawn FM. So I'd love to see maybe a Dawn FM house, or maybe a Dawn FM combined with his new album, whatever it's called, coming out this year. I think that'd be a pretty cool house, and it was a really popular house in 2022. So I think they'd want to definitely bring it back. Now another thing is there could be other musical artists. We didn't get a musical artist last year, so it kind of destroys the thing of Universal wanting to work with a musical artist every year. But we could see one maybe this year. Maybe they want to take a break. I know one that we were supposed to get in 2020, but because of COVID, it was canceled, was Billie Eilish house. That would have been really cool. Obviously, I think her whole image, she kind of got past the whole horror stuff with her image. So she might not want to do it, but there could be many other artists. I feel like some artists that come to mind immediately would be Radiohead, Metallica, and more. I think those artists could really lend great to a Hornets house. But yeah, any other musical artists? Maybe Lady Gaga. Any other musical artists you'd love to see?
I don't know. I feel like those are maybe. Did you say Metallica?
Yeah, Metallica.
Yeah, Metallica definitely. I would love Billie Eilish. I know you said that she's gotten past that. I don't know.
I think probably not.
Yeah.
I'd love to see a Radiohead.
One
maybe
based off Kid A.
But
I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, but I feel like the Kid A Amnesia, that album from Radiohead, could go pretty well with horror vibes, especially some pretty unsettling, maybe some trippy stuff, kind of like the Weeknd house, where even though the Weeknd isn't horror related, his songs can kind of give off that vibe of a horror, which lent itself well to Hornets. Now, one final IP house, and this is just one that I added because it's kind of a running joke for Hornets Hollywood, where every other year we get this house, and that's Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
It's been a few years though since
it has been a couple of years, but when they got it, it was like they constantly every single year was either a Halloween house or a Texas Chainsaw Massacre house. This was the first year, I feel like 2023, where we didn't get either. Yeah, I feel like, hey, if one IP house is gonna return, that's not based off a movie coming out, it's gonna be Texas Chainsaw Massacre or Halloween. Just one of those two is pretty likely, I feel like, because they always return. So those are all of our house predictions. Definitely put down in the comments below what houses you would love to see. But now let's talk about when we are gonna get those house announcements. I remember last year, the first house announcement we got was pretty early on, actually. and that was for Chucky. When we got it the last night of Horror Nights in 2022. We got the announcement that we're getting Chucky for 2023. Obviously, we did not get that this year, but I feel like because they did it so early, January could be the month of Horror Nights, our first Horror Nights announcement. They could want to do one early, maybe an IP house, maybe if like a trailer comes out for a horror movie coming out, maybe they could say, oh yeah, also, here we go, there's going to be a Horror Nights house based off of it. But we could see one January. Another guess is February. I believe either February or March was when we got the reveal of the Last of Us house. It was either February, March, or April. It was on Last of Us Day, if I remember.
Yeah.
And if I can remember when Last of Us Day is, it was sometime early
September.
No, but it was not in September. It was I don't
It was sometime like first half of the year.
It was definitely one of the first few months. It was a revealed in
I think like June. Yeah.
Okay, so we could see it anytime. I feel like if they want to get some reveals out, they could do it early. Maybe the next couple months, February, maybe the Super Bowl. They don't really usually do that, but hey, it's another place to reveal something. But I can think of some like stuff like that to maybe show up. Those would be pretty cool. But I remember we got a whole plethora of announcements kind of during the summer, like July. I remember July, like mid-July to like early August was when we got a lot of announcements. So definitely expect then to be like when we really get a lot. But again, when these spec maps are released for Horror Nights, a lot of those houses are true. I remember for last year's spec maps, we got a lot of houses that didn't show up, like Demon Slayer, and a couple other ones that just did not come true. But most houses did come true, like the Monsters Unmasked. Last of Us was rumored for them. Darkest Steel was another house that was rumored immediately. I believe even Evil Dead Rise was one that was kind of heavily rumored pretty early on in the spec maps. So I feel like when the spec maps do come out, those are pretty like trustful and like pretty trustworthy of like what could really happen. A lot of times those are true, and those are actually from heavy rumors based off those and like inside talks that they kind of find out about, and they put on the spec maps. So definitely look out for the spec maps. Those should be coming out in the next couple months. Obviously, it's too early for it now in January, but starting maybe March, April, we could start seeing spec maps. Then finally, we're just gonna go over really quickly before we end the video is other improvements to Horror Nights in 2024. Like we mentioned earlier in the video, a big issue with Horror Nights in 2023 was just the wait times and just the overcrowding. It was way too crowded. They oversold tickets way too much. A big thing they could do is just sell less tickets. That's probably what they're gonna do, so it might be a little harder to get tickets. So definitely when they do come for sale early on in the year, definitely immediately go out and get them because they might sell out a little quicker this year, especially if they have less. And I remember they were restocking the tickets. I know for the first time we went to Horror Nights in 2023, we wanted to go the first weekend, but we didn't buy a ticket in advance. It was a pretty like last minute decision to go, and like during that week it was sold out. But then that morning of that Saturday that we went, it all of a sudden was like, oh, it's not sold out. So we really quickly got it because they added more tickets. So I feel like maybe they might not do that when they sell out. They sell out. They're not going to add tickets on that morning, which is what I think. So if you want to get your tickets, plan your days early on. Don't last minute, might not work as well. But another improvement, and I think this is one that is less likely, but I'd love to see, is an extra house. I believe we have 8 houses in Hollywood and 10 houses in Orlando. And I would love to see 1 extra house, maybe even 2 extra houses in Hollywood. Orlando, they could add an 11th or a 12th house. Is very likely. With Hollywood, it's a little more difficult. They have less room to work with when it comes to adding areas for houses. Sadly, we've got a working movie studio behind us, so they don't really want to, like, obviously they have a couple sound stages that they build, like, certain things into, and also they used a brand new soundstage last year for Exodus Believer that they will probably use again. But maybe they could use a third soundstage for another house and have a ninth house, or maybe even have a 10th house as well. It's pretty likely, especially with Universal's kind of going all out the past couple of years, especially with spending on stuff. And I feel like because they are just taking ahead in the theme park race, they've just been doing some great stuff recently, and I feel like if they want to improve even more, maybe some extra houses could help with lowering the wait times for other houses, considering there are more houses to go to. This could alleviate the stress and build up at other houses. We could see with more if they have a lot of big IPs, like FNAF, Alan Wake 2, Last of Us Part 2, and like a Weekend House. All four of those would garner huge wait times, so maybe those could all have big wait times, but not too big because there's 4 big houses to go to. I remember for 2023, the big houses everyone went to that had long wait times were Last of Us and Stranger Things. Mm-hmm. Those two had really long wait times, while like houses like Monsters Unmasked was usually around 60. Holidays in Hell was usually at around 30 minutes, and Monstrose was usually also around 30 minutes usually. So same with even Evil Dead Rise didn't have that much long when it comes to wait times. So that just showed like everyone went. There were only like 2 big houses that people flocked to, and the rest of the houses had really short wait times.
Chucky was long too.
Yeah, so I feel like if they can have more IPs with maybe extra houses and more IPs could really help with alleviating wait times for all those IP houses, and also it shortened the wait times even more for the original houses that already don't get long wait times. Do you think those would be good improvements, and do you think it's possible?
Yeah, I don't know where they would put it because, there's not too much room that I can think of, but I think if it would happen, it would definitely make it better. I think a lot more houses would be more like, the more underrated houses would be given more people, and the more overrated houses wouldn't be as long, so that'd be good.
Yeah, no, I think it'd be nice. So that is going to be all for talking about when it comes to Horror Nights in 2023 and also Horror Nights in 2024. We are definitely going to, like I said earlier at the beginning of the video, we want to talk, now that it is the new year, a big thing we want to do on this channel is talk more about theme parks. Get more, and a big thing is we love theme parks. It's a huge thing we love other than movies, TVs, and video games. So we'd love to talk more about when there is news of a new ride opening up at Disneyland or Universal, and when we get our first announcements and for Horror Nights, and when we get the spec map in the next couple months, we will definitely make a video talking about it, discussing our thoughts on it, on the reveals and the spec maps, all of that. I'm sure when Horror Nights comes around, we will make a video on Horror Nights. But no, I can't wait for it. Should be a lot of fun. When we're talking about beyond 2024, one thing for Horror Nights related is we're getting the Horror Nights Unleashed just really quickly. That is the Horror Unleashed that is coming to Las Vegas. That is the year-round Horror Nights event. It's pretty cool. I definitely will, considering we are in California, we're pretty close by to Las Vegas, just one state away, so we will try to visit that as much as possible when it comes out in supposedly sometime 2025. So can't wait for that. When we get closer to that, we will definitely make videos on our hopes for that, what we think could be there, how we think it'll work. But for now, that will be all. Thank you so much for watching. If you want us to do any more videos on other ideas, we are definitely open. So definitely put down in the comments below anything else you'd love to see. What are your predictions for next year? What were your thoughts on 2023 Horror Nights? And so thank you so much for watching, and have a good rest of your day.